All right, let's take a look at the action outline format. So what I have here for you. I also have it posted in a template, so all you have to do is type into it. But I want you to notice a couple of things. These numbers are arbitrary. Doesn't matter how many you have. It just so happened that when we look at this one, it falls onto around this number. What is important is that it's easy to identify here what the obstacles are, the goals, those 5 key elements that you have to have in your story. And then I want you to look over here on the right. There isn't dialogue here. There's no camera angles, no camera shots. We haven't blocked shots yet. This is story structure, and these are the bones. And what happens in here is you look at this as the key action. So the film opens on the porch with the girl, and then we see the boys from across the porch. And we meet both the boys, and then the phone rings. Excuse me again. All this takes place in the setup. We get to see where the story's taken place, who our characters are. We're not going to deviate from this as we start this beginning journey. All right? This is all I want from you. And everything needs to be set up here, all right? The turning point is when Colin gets the phone call from his girlfriend. And in that exchange, we get our goal. So this turns the story, because the setup to that point, we don't know where the boys were going to go. They could have gone off to play soccer. They could have gone off to school. They could have gone off to a bar. The phone call sets the story in action and sets the goal, which is you have to come pick me up before school. Now, we get another element, which is we get to establish that his girlfriend's needy, both in the dialogue from Dugan and by her demanding that he get there on a clear day when she really could find other ways to get there. In this one scene, we have both our setup and our turning point. And we break now for titles. And the titles are actually over movement, so we know he's gone to get her. Now the obstacles begin. His car breaks down. Everything that takes place in this story now is going to be driven up to the point of the climactic event or the goal. Does he make it or does he not? And what things prevent him or challenge him to get to the goal? It's really this simple. And this works on such a small scale like this, and even a much larger scale, as you're going to be able to identify. Now you know what these keys are. So the car breaks down. He's picked up by the first stranger. He mistakenly takes the wrong pills, and he's dumped in the middle of nowhere. Now there's some funny bits in here. The pills actually go back to the headache that he has in the front, and it comes back towards the end. But elementary, in terms of the story, they have no bearing. Okay? It's not key to the story. What is key is that the car's broken down, and now he's trying to get to his girlfriend. Yes? He wakes up alone, back to the street, gets picked up by the second stranger, is left in the car, gunshots, and then what does the character decide to do? He doesn't run in and rescue. He doesn't grab a gun and challenge. He decides to beat it out of there. These actions are defining who Colin is as a character. It's not his choice of words as much as it is his actions. And then the final group of strangers are the girls, and he's still not home. And he's kicked out of there, and this sets up his connection and meeting with Nicole. They have this nice moment, but the story still must be completed. Does he make it to her, to Nicole, or not? And he hops on the back of the scooter. Off they go. Now, the story is complete in terms of structure. He's attained his goal. And in this area here, what does that mean once he gets there? And he has an epiphany, if you will, that his girlfriend really isn't very nice, and he's going to go back and search for Daffodil Girl. And the resolution, or the moral, this being the resolution here up to the moral, is something along the lines of don't get stuck in a bad relationship. So this process, you can see how simple it is just a brilliant, simple way to create your story. And this happened many times while we were working on it. If an obstacle wasn't right, what didn't work, wasn't funny, you can move these things, you can shift them around, and it's all done here before you hop in and start hanging dialogue onto these characters. You know exactly now what's going to take place. All right. Some of the things that I want you to do when you're thinking about your action outline for me, one is you only have time for one protagonist, one event. This is all that we're looking to do. Now, you can pull in different things from different parts of your life, but the story, what takes place, is a simple event. You have to simplify these things, all right? And you only have time in a short story for one protagonist. And even in features, you can argue that most of them have one protagonist, okay? The antagonist I leave up to you. In this case, it wasn't one person that was preventing Colin from getting to his girlfriend. It was a series of events, and that's perfectly fine. But each one of those could be identified as the antagonist because they're creating obstacles for the protagonist to get to the goal, right? So I want you to write a story for me in this format, and I want you to write one that we could film today if we had to. By that I mean it can't be science fiction. I don't want it to be historical. I don't want it to take place at the Eiffel Tower. I want something that you could shoot here if it turned out to be a story that you really liked and wanted to develop. And what I want you to do is start with this action outline. And I don't want you to freak out about it. There's all kinds of ways to start with this stuff. Start with something that you know, and then you're going to embellish it into this format. All right. So did you have a fun first date? Did you have a funny first date? Those are great because we're always nervous about those things. And those are great stories to tell, and they tend to be kind of visual, right? So what happened on that first date? Now, it's not a documentary. We don't really care what happened on your first date. As a writer, you're just pulling from that event to create a shell that you're going to start to plug in obstacles and all those things, right? So you don't have to tell the exact thing that happened to you. You have to use that and then massage it to fit in our format. But you could talk about the first dog or cat that you got, your first day in school, the worst date. It doesn't have to be good things. It doesn't always have to be funny things. They can be meaningful things. But these are generally good places to start. Once you have that idea, once you have that fun story that your friends have laughed at or cried at, now you have to fit it into this format, and it must contain those elements, all right, that we talked about here at the very beginning. I do want you to make sure that you add a time element. So this is why an event like a first date would work really good, because it's all the things that took place that created challenges for you to get through that first date, or the things that happened on that first date. And let's say that her parents said she had to be home by 11 o'clock. So you can add this time element and compress your story and embellish your story so that it fits into this model by that 11 o'clock time frame. So the first puppy wouldn't have that time element, and you'd have to give it to it. So is it the first day that your puppy met the family and the rest of them? On school, that first day of school, is it all the things that happen up to that first day of school, or is it all the things that happen on that first day? And hopefully your protagonist gets relief at the 3:30 bell when it rings if it was high school. So I want you to understand the importance of the time element. It plays a role in those 5 key elements of the story. And then as a writer, you just embellish this. So all I want from you this week is an outline, much like this. But in your outline, we have to see what this flow looks like, what your characters are doing, how they're being challenged in these obstacles, and then just keep it very simple, all right? Because we're going to work on this a little bit, but this is what I want you to keep in mind. And again, just remember, you're telling a story to a friend. That's your shell, and then you're going to go back and fit it into an action outline. And you're going to begin to change those things. It doesn't matter if something happened or didn't. You can put those elements in so that it becomes something that's a good story. All right, so that said, I'll give you some more specific instructions further on. Thank you for sticking around, and good luck this week.